Frieren has action, demons, this guy, but one of his most compelling elements is this romance, this epic. Well, you saw the title, probably. I'm not talking about this one, I'm talking about these two. A love story in Frieren that's a little less fantasy and a little more real. The Fern and Stark relationship is one of the more interesting ones that we see. You could transplant this character dynamic with its symbolism and nuance into a different setting, one without the magic or demons or giant hamburgers, and it would be just as wonderful. It's the realist romance in Frieren. Why? Why a pairing between Mr. Popular, who keeps running away, and a stern girl raised by a drunken priest? It's different, and really quite real. Let's start with how they first meet, that Fern is the entire reason Stark enters the story, and sticks around at all, and that the relationship from the start is something different. If we're zooming in on the bond between these two, we need to start with how it begins. First impressions are a funny thing. On the surface, it's pretty poor. But no, not really. There's actually a lot more in common between this meeting and this one. Fern is the one to seek Stark out. She's looking to find the good in him, the reason people like him so much. She's pretty harsh when they first meet. He's no good, let's go get a new warrior. But after seeing that everyone town-wide just absolutely loves this guy, she wants to find out why, wants to see what they see. So, on a lovely moonlit night, the priest's adopted daughter sneaks out alone to go and meet a boy. And yeah, she's asking about the dragon they need to fight, but not entirely, not really. That's what's kind of special about their first meeting. It doesn't inherently have a romantic undertone at first, but it does show a deeper bond right from the start. After getting to know Stark a little bit, Fern grabs his hand and tells this reassuring story, one that draws out the similarities between them. Their first impression is this sweet moment. They just seem to click. Fern might prefer not to let on that she had that kind of fear at first, but she clearly has more in common with Stark than her manner would suggest. They've had an instant connection and understanding, and on an intimate level. Immediately, apparently having the kind of openness to share these private feelings, thoughts, and memories. And Fern does see Stark differently. Though you're a hopeless coward, I believe you're resolved to protect the village. It's not love at first sight, it's a far cry from Himmel and Frieren, but in a way it's not that different. There's someone doing something impressive and the other trying to find out why. It's not cutting the hole in the mountain that's the impressive action though, it's their first impression of kindness and the effect that has on someone. It's one person afraid, and the other offering something of understanding. Both main ships of Frieren have this in common. Stark is trying to become the warrior the town thinks he is, but he lacks the context to know he already is that. He's vulnerable, alone at night, practicing. Is she seeing what's so appealing about Stark here? Beyond the strength that he does want to live up to people's image of him, wants to make them right in their faith. It's quite in line with some of her own principles, despite their surface level differences. Then, of course, Stark easily defeats the dragon. Maybe that's a little impressive, and that's the opener for the Fern Stark romance. Is there a romantic feeling here already? There's something very sweet to this meeting. It's establishing a grounded and real bond between the two. And then the next scene she does see you make it, so yeah, maybe. From the start we've got some romantic elements to these two, but the main archetype you'd use might be a slow burn. Maybe it's just not the focus, it isn't a romance manga after all. But I think Frieren has a depth to some elements where we can find a lot of meaning with Stark and Fern. Even if it is a slow burn, it's the kind of romance where we see them get closer, the slice of life stuff, the bonding, the little moments. Romance in anime often comes down to these kinds of setups, these archetypical types. Frieren and Himmel is this grand, tragic romance, and that's how Himmel treats it. Fern and Stark, though, they've got a very specific way. It's a slow burn, they're getting to know each other, getting closer. It's that kind of a romance. Some of the most important areas are understated. Buying each other birthday gifts, eating burgers, not sharing the burgers. They develop a really honest feeling interplay, a pair of personalities that match each other, and we see them grow closer, partially from the time skips that come from, following an elf around. There's a real ease of communication and grounded bond compared to most of our casts. If we're talking slow burn and communication, there's the whole matter of honorifics and how they address each other. The proper Fern sticks with the more formal ones for Stark, even as we get years into their journey together. Essentially, I can read it as a pet name, and you can't stop me. They are dropped on a few occasions though. Once where Stark asks her to, so she's insulting and he sulks. He's constantly sulking. Fern is very good at cutting through Stark's more childish impulses though, as much as Stark gets Fern to relax a little bit. There's a realness to that bond by how well they balance each other in that way. Fern knows how to deal with him. Drag him away, don't be childish. She evens out Stark's worst qualities, and he kinda does the same for her, even in times of crisis. I mean, she'd be a lot less fun without Stark around. Even in the fights with demons, we get some nice stuff since they're on a side mission together. Stark shows some real growth in this fight, and in the little Metal Gear infiltration mission first. Fern says they need to be brave and face the demons, but she does. I mean, he definitely does. She brings out a better side of him. And this is someone who once just panicked in place for years. So this is a big stride. He steals himself. A lot of the development for Stark uses his relationship with Fern to get there, that she can actually talk to him. But the smaller moments demonstrate quite a bit looking at the sky, Stark helping Fern off a log she's walking over. In the background, we got to see how much their lives become intertwined. From their perspective, the time spent together so far has made them used to living together. Comfortable. A few years feel much longer when you're younger. It might be a slow burn, but we're seeing their romance bloom, and they're actually making decent progress if we zoom out. We get a lot of Fern and Stark growing closer through smaller moments, but one comes pretty quickly. When Frieren is willing to wait years for a gate to open, Fern goes to Stark for help, and he goes from what's the problem to fine, have some ice cream in about 2 seconds because Stark is pretty much constantly indulging her. He helps her try and find a way through the gate. He shows off his resourcefulness, his people skills. As he says, he can even deal with the town scumbags since people think he looks pretty strong. She decides that he has the face of a scoundrel, but has a smile as if she's appreciating it. She first went to meet him to find out why people found him so charming, and she's found a dragon-slaying warrior with the innocence of a child who comes in pretty handy and is willing to indulge her whenever she wants. I mean, I think he's growing on her, whether he wanted to or not, and that's a pretty frequent thing that Stark attracts the affections of people without even trying. The little plan doesn't work, but they see a bit of a different side to each other. Despite being a bit childish and goofy, he's sweet. The more Fern sees of Stark, the more he actually fits her view of the world. It's a classic kind of pairing, and for Stark's point of view, I think he needs the structure that she provides. She's trying to get Frieren not to waste years in the town, right after Stark spent 3 years sitting around panicking. They're framed as a fitting counterweight to each other, pretty much from the off. It's not all the slow burn, slow moments though. There are some major set pieces for Fern and Stark, including one that's especially special. So if we're talking about a romance with these two, there's one portion that's impossible to ignore. The dance, the soirée, that thing. It begins when Fern is concerned about their lack of funds, so Stark gets headhunted once again. People have taken a liking to Stark and identified a replacement son figure in him. There are a few things we need to highlight in this opening. There's the infantilization of Stark a little bit, with the Lord calling Frieren his mummy, and then there's the fact that Fern attempts to talk him into it, which is basically just suggesting it, because he tends to just do as he's told. It's all setting up for Stark to make a move outside of his normal role. The setup is that it's a cover-up, there's political intrigue. But it's a romantic dance, let's not bother with the politics right now. There's a cute scene where Stark tries to show off what he's learned. He becomes a real gentleman for just a second, a step above their normal flirting, but Fern says she prefers the normal Stark. This segment has a lot of relevance for him and all. His shaking coming back up, the training situation, and the warrior clan. It's not dissimilar to his flashback, and it's enough to bring up his feelings of inadequacy, but Stark has grown. Where it gets interesting is that Fern has to attend the soirée too, which cuts off the donut party that's going on. Fern's prep is to bring her up to speed with high society as well. I think they're both out of their comfort zone here. Yet, at the actual ball, it's different. Sure, they're complaining about it. Fern even apologizes for getting him into it in the first place. But then Stark goes to take her hand. Why shouldn't they enjoy it? The Stark that would normally just cave to what Fern wants, the Stark that she apparently preferred. That's not what we're seeing. It's a self-determined Stark who wants to dance, stepping out of what his traveling companions expect of him, making his own decisions and moves. Suddenly, this Stark isn't so bad. Or why shouldn't they dance, even if it wasn't their choice? Why can't they enjoy the soirée? They have the pretenses all for snack money, but does it look like they're just forcing themselves? So, why is this scene important? It shows there's more to their dynamic. Stark can do more and it'll be appreciated. He can step beyond expectations. All too often, Stark is reliant on those around him to direct him. He doesn't have the self-confidence to follow himself. He goes beyond that here. Fern, who normally expects people to fit her views of them and has this inflated view of Stark, she gets to be surprised by him, and pleasantly for once. It's obviously a highlight for their romance in the early bit, and it shows how much they can communicate. At the end, when Stark's looking outside at the warrior training, Fern even heads over to try and share his moment. They have a better bond and communication than we see with others. Frankly, it's also a treat for everyone who's rooted for this. It's nice to get fed a little bit. There's no Himmel, Frieren hidden natures here. They're beaming, enjoying it. Enjoying paying off all that prep is maybe the happiest we see someone with the company of another long term. No lingering sadness, no tragic element. It's just actual joy. That contrast, we'll come back to that, but first we've got birthday presents and symbolism with the language of the flowers. The birthday segments are important for both Stark and Fern. Stark's comes earliest, and it's most caught up with the flashbacks to his childhood. But as is quite typical, this is revealed through him and Fern. Pairing them up happens a lot earlier on before Stark ends up getting a little less attention overall. But it does sell their bond on a more realistic level. We can buy the intimacy because it seems they're together for most of his development. It begins because Frieren just wants to read alone. It's Stark's 18th birthday, and thanks to his, you know he is with stuff like this, he didn't tell anyone, he didn't want to make a fuss. Fern's upset that he'll notice that she didn't buy him a present, despite Stark being made of one of the densest materials on Earth. He's been out on a helping streak as usual, winning over the peanut gallery around the town. We get this lovely scene as she's approaching him, having assumed Mr. Stark won't appreciate a dirty potion. She's built up this idea of him. I think it's been there since she realized what the village under dragon attack thought of him. He punctures it plenty, but there's still a charm to his childishness. It doesn't even occur to him about the birthday present. She tries to do something nice, then instinctively insults him after getting embarrassed. But since he didn't get any presents from his family, we get a longer flashback. He shares some of his problems and we get to the root of his confidence issues. Fern seems to know exactly what to say to him though. Since that first meeting, they have an understanding of each other when it comes to the important stuff. Stark has eased through a lot of his early character development just by Fern reiterating her belief in him. The warrior Stark I've known has never run. The past doesn't matter, she won't let him run in the future when he says he might. She knew exactly what to say. So she gets him a present he can pick, and then she can pick a cheaper one. This bangle bracelet, he wears it a lot. It's a focal point for some shots in the future. It becomes symbolically important to Stark's development and their bond, a little representation of that faith in what Stark is. He didn't get the most normal upbringing, just like Fern being a product of heightened morality, kinda. Stark is a product of a more quiet form of parenting, plus the burden of losing his family and blaming himself. Having this kind of bond of familiarity is part of what makes their romantic development such a great fit. What makes the relationship feel more authentic. In terms of communication, Fern and Stark seem solid at the important bits, the deep stuff, the rough memories, the fears, all that. They're really good at that deeper connection. But the everyday? No, not so much. That's difficult, isn't it? They're young, and they didn't get the most even upbringing. Their form of communication is real feeling for this age. There is that awkwardness. Like the issues where Stark tries to touch Fern's cheek back, something that he's given more importance to than it may be needed, but he didn't understand how his flirting might have been a little awkward, a bit clumsy. He wants to make up with her, but his standard method is to roll over and go with what someone else says. He needs to be told he has to sometimes work it out for himself. They've almost figured out how to interact, they just need a slight nudge. They both know exactly how to settle this standoff and why it happened. They get the deeper stuff, but they're young and need a push to apologize to each other. I think despite these hiccups, just kind of reinforces that they're solid, that they have this better understanding. It's also such a sweetly real moment for their age. I mean, awkwardness will happen. When Fern's sick, it's Stark carrying her back, and vice versa when he collapses in the snow. Their pairing feels lived in, like we've seen it in a time of crisis, in the everyday, in the minor arguments, and we can get a sense of why it works in each. We even see how that first impression from Fern, seeing what makes people like Stark so much, continues. Like when he's in this state, Fern assumed someone has taken advantage of sweet Stark even when she knows what happened. It's Sign's fault for doing the gambling at him. It's all this built-up version of him. She has the noblest idea of Stark at times. I don't think it's that far off either. She first comes round to him as the hero of the village, and despite his low self-esteem, I think she routinely sees this brave, noble Stark. It helps that a lot of the Fern-Stark situations we get to see from both sides. Fern is sick, Stark is sick. It's Fern's birthday, it's Stark's birthday. And now when it's Fern's turn, we get maybe the best example of this blossoming in the language of the flowers, with the mirrored Lotus. So there's more of that bad at the minor stuff, good at the big stuff for Fern's birthday. But after their hiccup is sorted, Stark spends time gauging her reactions. He can read her quite well, trying to make sure he gets her something nice. I think coming after the bangle which she still wears, he likely wanted something as meaningful for Fern, something which is as symbolically linked to them as Stark's is to his identity. It's sweet, it's quieter than the Himmel and Frieren ring scene that it's presented alongside, but as a direct contrast to that, it's more befitting this more grounded love story. The symbolism of flowers in Frieren can be quite stark. And this is one of the cases where we're directly told to read into them. The mirrored Lotus bracelet, what does it mean? They weren't aware it meant eternal love at first. There's a difference to the flowers on it compared to the ones on Frieren's ring though. Fern's have bloomed and Frieren's haven't. Despite them being so much younger, their love is fully blossoming, whereas Frieren's was still waking up. They also find out what the bracelet means, and it doesn't change anything. She doesn't want to replace it, accepting that gesture in full knowledge of what it means, and continuing to wear it. Symbolically, their relationship is already in blossom. They might be a little awkward together from time to time, but the symbolism extends beyond Fern's present too. Stark's bangle is linked as well. The ring is present for that sequence, thanks to Frieren fishing out a recipe. The bangle is linked to Stark's identity, which Fern has helped him form. Both will make them a permanent part of themselves in the future, leaving the symbolism on show full time. In the language of the flowers, Fern and Stark are fully in bloom. It's not the focus of the story, of course, but simmering away in the background, we're seeing a much realer feeling romance. What I think is the big difference between Fern and Stark and others is how normal the bond is. We're shown they have a solid way of communication with each other. There's a lot of flirting, like a whole lot. They're paired together at a lot of the slice of life bits early on. It's nice to get so much material. While Himmel and Frieren's romance is in the past tense, tragic, so much of Fern and Stark's is present, up and down, but always here. Frieren's statement on Himmel giving her the courage to travel. Do you think Fern and Stark have impacted each other's goals? Stark wouldn't have joined the party without Fern. She talked him into it, even if Frieren might have manipulated them to get her friend's student involved in the long run. When they fail to communicate, they have a real person's communication problem. It isn't a 10-year adventure where you have a head thicker than a one-piece omnibus to miss someone's crush. So much is about failures to understand each other in Frieren, or a failure to reach out. The contrast between Frieren's longevity, giving her the space to make colossal fuck-ups, and the mayflyness of humans in comparison. It means Fern and Stark don't have the time. Compared to what we see with Himmel and Frieren, they have to understand each other very quickly. They seem to get each other, and the problems that they do have come from a predictable place. It's just their more childish tendencies, which is stuff they're growing out of. Is more than a contrast to Frieren and Himmel, but using this as a parallel, we get Fern and Stark as a more unconventional anime romance, one where they can actually communicate, and in fact communicate quite well. One where they can make progress, they can move on, go on dates eventually. Every factor that makes Himmel and Frieren a more tragic romance or unfulfilled is working to make Fern and Stark a more real one. And having the two in contrast helps emphasize the point of both, of communicating in a way where you can really help someone else with the deep stuff. It's not the kind of storyline you'd expect from a fantasy. We could move the setting to the present day, to something supernatural, to basically anywhere, and this would all still work. You could do every conversation, every beat. That's what's so endearing about it and this romance. Frieren and Himmel are fantasy, but Fern and Stark are a kind of real love. Hey, thanks for watching. If you got all the way through, there's a sub button. You know how it works. Alright, cheers.